What I want is for you to really marriage your different passions together, right? Because you are good at games, but try to identify something else that you are really good at. And that's going to enhance your expertise when you actually join a games industry. When I was studying the engineering, because I always wanted to get into the games industry, and we had this campus placements, where a lot of IT companies used to come, and I was having no interest in sitting for those placements because I knew, there are no gaming companies in India that would come for placements, basically, right? So what happened is I used to skip all of those, and suddenly, out of the blue, I got a call from a few of my classmates. So basically, she found an article in the newspaper and she noticed that there is a company called Level Up in Mumbai. Apparently, they are looking to hire someone in the field of games, right? And then I applied for it. It was basically for a gameplay expert position at Level Up India. So it's a Philippine company, and it was a pretty unique experience because they called me for an interview at Taj in Mumbai. The interview, I believe, was for about 2 hours. So it was just about the interviewer. He had come down from Philippines, and he was like a very famous game master for Ragnarok Online. And we were just talking for 2 hours, and then he decided to hire me, basically. My entry was to work as a gameplay expert for Level Up Games in Mumbai. After that, I got an opportunity to start my career as a game designer. That was my first entry into actually making games, right? Because as a gameplay expert, it was about managing someone else's game, right? As a game designer, I actually started to learn new things and make my own games. And when I joined Nazara, I think it was a very beautiful opportunity because I got to work as a producer at Nazara. So that was very important because as a producer, I got to learn about people management, handling budget for games. How do you communicate with your external clients? How do you make sure your game is taking the right path? So this were like my initial paths before I went into Ubisoft and learned a lot more, obviously. So we were also, I would say, one of the first in India to work on Java 3D games, which was using JSR 184 API and Brew 3D. So what we started to do is we started to port certain PC games to the mobile platform, right? Because it's an easier entry and it allows you to learn a lot rather than making your game from scratch. So some of the games that we worked on was Kickshot Pool 3D, and I remember we also worked on Anime Bowling Waves. We also had the IP of Lauren and Hardy. So apart from this, which I said that I was also working as a producer, so this were, I would say, like the high-end games in the year of 2005 and 6, right? Somewhere around there. And apart from that, I was also in charge of making very small hyper-casual games for the old Reliance handsets, if you remember. Those handsets were like, did not support colors at all, right? And you were supposed to make sure that the games are very small in size, right? Not more than 1 MB or 2 MB, something like that. So it was very challenging, and I had to keep making sure that we keep shipping games every 14 days, to make the customer happy. So it was like a dual responsibility of making high-end games and also making some very small casual games for Reliance. At Ubisoft, the biggest benefit was, the exposure to other industry veterans, and you actually interact with them, you learn from them directly, right? So the team I had and the mentors that I had were exceptional at Ubisoft, right? They sent certain employees for training to other studios, right? So I was basically sent to Paris in France, and we had like a 14-day course in a castle. So where we learned about designing games without using computers. And when it comes to having our first Nintendo DS game at Ubisoft India, so it was again an incredible opportunity because making something for Nintendo is also a dream come true, right? They have guidelines for everything. So if your game gets rejected, then you have to resubmit your game until it gets approved. And I remember our game did not get rejected; it got actually accepted at the first try. So it was also amazing. As a producer, what you really need to understand is how do you make sure your team is working effectively under different constraints. So what it means is basically you have to make Excel tables and project management plan, right? You have to actually make sure that your game will take 4 months to make, for example, a mobile game, right? So within this 4 months, how do you divide your time? You spend 15 days for prototyping, and how many man months are those? How much money can you spend for the prototyping? So everything to do with money management and which people are the right for that particular game. So as a producer, the benefit is you can actually pick people. So what happens is we have multiple producers, right? But I want a particular programmer to work on my project. Project management and product management is what a producer really has to do. As a designer, he has a lot of conflicts and fights with the producer, right? So this happens because as a designer, he wants to push his creative vision as much as possible in the project. But keeping to push your creative vision can be expensive in the end, right? So this is where the producer comes in. So the producer's mind is supposed to take off, and he's like, we have this many features and we have already spent X amount of money, and we have to stop designing and start making the game after 3 days, else we will run out of money. In my case, because I've had like short missions out of India when I was at Ubisoft, so I realized that I really want to have like a long-term career outside of India, right? And Europe was one of the places where I really wanted to be. When I came to Malaysia, it was basically I got headhunted. So I got an opportunity. Someone found me on LinkedIn and they gave me a very interesting opportunity to work in Malaysia. So I was offered the role of a game design head over there. And basically I had my own team for R&D and making educational games. And from there, eventually I came to Munich. So it's the same thing because I got an opportunity to work in Europe for a long term, and working as a design director was also a dream come true again to continue working in this field. So I would say game industry in Asia is quite different from game industry in Europe and North America. So I can tell you that the Asia's market is the fastest growing gaming industry market in the world right now. So it's growing really fast. At the same time, the biggest markets are still Europe and North America. So the type of games that come out from Asia are quite different. So they focus a lot on mobile, casual, online experiences, and a lot of localized content, which kind of caters to a very specific audience in Asia, right? So you could maybe find few games that have mainstream appeal outside, in the Western market, a game that is made in Asia, right? And it's kind of the other way when a game is made in Europe or North America. So usually games from Europe or North America has a lot of wide appeal. It satisfies the mainstream market. And they also make a lot of premium products compared to, rather having some free-to-play experiences, which is very heavy in markets like Japan and China, basically, right? And in terms of where you want to work for and, which is good for visa and everything, I can see that it boils down to a couple of different factors. Is first you have to identify the type of games that you want to make, right? That's your first thing. And the second would also be, certain companies have language barriers. So the biggest is Japan, right? So Japan is a country that I would say a lot of gaming buffs, they always, think of having like a proper career in a games industry in Japan. So in Japan, it's very hard for you to get in if you do not speak Japanese, right? I know a couple of my friends, designers, who actually learned Japanese before applying to companies in Japan. I would still suggest, to try out in Singapore, because Singapore is also biggest in Southeast Asia and other places. Right now, there are a lot of festivals. I would say the biggest is Global Game Jam that keeps happening from time to time. And because of a lot of resources available online, I mean, you can download an engine for free. You can learn tutorials. I mean, you can go through tutorials and, develop a game in 2 days. So I would say you should really do that. You should form your small group and, make a game and apply for Global Game Jam. You should attend events like Casual Connect if you can, or go to GDC whenever possible, right? So events like this help you connect with a lot of industry professionals. It's very important to know that you like games. So you are already, I would say, first step is already there, right? So you want to make a career in games. But the next important step that you really need to understand is, apart from games, where else is your passion? So what it means is, are you good at drawing or painting? Or are you good at writing characters? Or are you good at, building sculptures or structures? Because depending on this, what I would advise is, If you're good at writing, then maybe go and do a literature course. Or, if you're good at mathematics and solving complex mechanical problems, maybe join an engineering degree, right? Because what I want is for you to really marriage your different passions together, right? Because you are good at games, but try to identify something else that you are really good at. And that's going to enhance your expertise when you actually join a games industry. And this is what personally I have found in my experience also. In my case, I had also subscribed to a lot of gaming magazines like Computer Gaming World and PC World, and they usually had a demo disc in the magazine. So they had, shareware game demos and applications that you can fiddle with and learn from those, right? So I used to do a lot of this. And apart from that, I also bought a lot of expensive books apart from studying from engineering. So I remember there was this books that I bought back then called Game Programming Gems. So it was a very famous book. And there's this place in Mumbai which used to sell game books basically back then. For now, I can recommend there are like 2 channels which I really like. So on YouTube, there is a channel called Game Makers Toolkit, which is very useful. And there's also another channel called Extra Credits, which is also very good. So I would say these 2 channels are quite good. So there is one book which I really like called Game Development and Production by Eric Bethke. And there's a book called A Theory of Fun for Game Design by Ralph Koster, right? Which also had recent revised editions. So I think you should get those. And there is a book called Flow, Optimal Play Experience, right? If I remember right, the full name of the book. But it's basically Flow. It's basically about psychology of keeping the players in the flow when designing the games. So you really need to know about, player psychology and a lot of these things to be a better game designer in the end. So when you're making games, you cannot spend 5 to 8 hours a day just to play games and, develop your pro gaming skill sets. Because, it's just not doable, right? So when you're making games, you still have to devote, I would say, like certain time a day or a week, you pick up a game that you really want and you try to have a change of your mind and learn from what different games are doing out there. So one thing you should never stop is you should never stop playing games when you are actually making games, right? Because you really need to understand what's there in the market and how is your game going to be really different when it comes out. I think the first thing someone should have told me was, designing games is not just about writing stories on a piece of paper, right? Because you have to have a lot of things when designing. It's not just about writing. So this is something that I realized when I started working professionally as a designer, right? And not before that. Then I would say the next thing would be, how do you make sure that you are designing for the right person? Because usually what happens is, as a gaming buff, you want to, just like what you said, right? You want to have the next Dota or the next PUBG. So it's not just about going there and trying to make Dota, right? You have to really understand who is the demographic, who is the target audience, and why you are making a game for that particular audience, right? So usually early beginning amateur designers, they cannot really understand about player experience, right? And it was something that was at fault in my case also. When I was young and I was starting out, I just wanted to design like the most ambitious game out there. But it doesn't work like that, right? You really need to understand the target audience. And the third most important thing is reverse engineering games. So which I kind of was doing, but not doing that well. So what it basically means is you need to get back on the board and you need to try to figure out why a particular game is so famous or why do you really like that game. You have to break it down, do analysis, and reverse engineer the mechanics of fun, so to say, right? So this is something that I did not do before being a professional game designer, right? So this is something that would have been helpful knowing today.